Hey folks, welcome to another advisory. Happy Wednesday. I hope you are all doing well. Today's video is going to be about another academic skill. This time, it's about taking notes. First, let me tell you something about learning and memory. All learning is taking in information, and memory is the process of storing that information for later. Sometimes our brains are very good at this, sometimes they need a little extra help. But don't take my word for it. Listen to Hermann Ebbinghaus, who came up with the forgetting curve. Basically what happens is this: if you learn something right here at the top left corner, the longer time goes on, the more easy it is to forget what you learned. He also found that there are ways to combat the forgetting curve itself, namely by reviewing the information that was learned in the first place. So you'll notice here that if you have a presentation or a lecture, then you start to forget, but then a day later you see an email about it, and then you may start to forget, but then again you have a text about that information a couple of days later, and it reminds you of it. If you hadn't have done any of these things to review the material, you would have forgotten things within about 3 days, according to this chart. His work showed us that the best way to remember things is to constantly review the information that you want to remember. Say, for example, you're in class and you're learning something that the teacher tells you will be tested in 6 days. Now, if you just listen to the lecture the one time and try to retain all the information from it, it's going to be a little difficult. That is represented by the red line here. You forget things at an exponential rate right after you learn them, unless you go back to the information every day or so to remember things. If you go one day later and you review the information a day after getting the lecture, then you might remember more than you would by the time the 6 days rolls around. But the best way to do it is to take good notes and look at them at each of these points leading up to the test. So today I thought I would show you 4 different styles of taking notes. Whatever you do to take notes is going to be up to you. You're going to have to figure out as you grow as a student what note-taking skills and strategies best help you remember the information. And it may not be the same for every class. Maybe one set of note-taking skills is good for math, but it may not be good for English or history. That's all up to you to figure out, but I at least want to show you 4 different ways that you can use both in lecture and later while you're studying the information. All right, first let's talk about the sentence method. All right, this is good in a pinch for getting down a lot of information in not a lot of time. It helps get down as much information as possible, but it is disorganized, and it can be reviewed and reorganized with another method later. This is just for getting all the information regurgitated onto the page as quickly as possible. And you can see this example below. You can see that all they have is one big topic that the lecture or the lesson is over, and they just have line after line. It's just numbered lines. There's no real other way of organizing it. It's just get down one idea, skip to the next line, write down the next idea, and that's it. Very simple, not very organized, but at least it's good for getting everything down. The second method is probably the method that I have used most often, and that is the outline method. If you'll notice the example, it's a series of headers and subheaders, and all you do is indent a little to the right to put smaller details of the larger topics that you put as your subheader. This indentation helps to organize information quickly and logically. It also is helpful for following lectures and lessons that are very clearly structured. And so if you know that a teacher or a lesson is going to have a specific type of structure ahead of time, then you can use your outline method to get the big subheaders down and then fill in the smaller details as the lecture goes on. The most effective way to use the outline method is to use it to reorganize messy notes. And so if you use the sentence method before and you want to organize that information more logically, then you can take it and put it into this outline method later whenever you're studying on your own. The third method I have for you is Cornell notes. You may have already learned how to do Cornell notes, but just as a refresher, it starts with an essential question, the main topic of the lecture or the lesson that you're trying to take notes over at the very top right here. And then you'll notice that it's divided into sections with a thinner column right here to the left, the main portion of the notes over here to the right, and some space blocked off at the bottom for summarizing. While you will take most of your notes in the big portion right here, the left is for you to ask questions of the notes. Basically, as you think of questions that come up of the information, or if you're reviewing the information later, you write down questions that you have and then seek answers for those questions in the section with the notes. The Cornell method is best for recording main concepts and keeping track of the questions that you might have. It is very time efficient and it can be organized very quickly. Tracking questions helps to retain information more accurately, and it creates a clear connection between big concepts and the smaller details that support those big concepts. The fourth and final method I want to talk about is the mapping method. This is not probably a method that you're going to use while you're taking notes in real time. It's probably going to be best for reviewing notes you've already taken and visualizing the connections between ideas. If you consider yourself a visual learner, the mapping method can be very helpful to you, especially when it comes to piecing together the information that you have in your other notes, whether you used an outline or the sentence method to take notes in class. When you're studying for a test, mapping it out like this can be very helpful to make connections that you may not have thought of already during class, and you can clearly follow the larger topics down to their smaller details just by following the lines. Plus, it just looks cool. I mean, it makes your notes look like a fleet of alien spaceships coming down to Earth to attack. And those are the methods that I've found to be most effective at taking notes, both in class and later when you're studying by yourself. I hope these help, and I hope that you use a combination of all these things. These are your notes, and so the only thing that really matters is whether or not the information can make sense to you later when you're reviewing them. What we're going to do now is watch a short video over a concept that you may or may not have heard about before, and I'm going to ask that you use one or more of these methods to try to take notes over it just for practice. You can find those instructions on the next slide. Best of luck, have fun, and be good to yourself and others. I'll see you real soon.